Hello everyone, and welcome to Unit 10 within Module 3. This unit is on social networks. For this unit, you have a series of readings and of course, all of the material that's been mounted onto the course website. I hope that you will enjoy working through it. This is a particularly interesting unit for me, and within it I'll be able to share with you some recent research that I conducted using some of the concepts from this idea of social networks. In order to get started, I want to generally introduce the idea of social networks to you and the importance of social networks. And there's no better way to do so than to play a little game. The Kevin Bacon game. You might know the Kevin Bacon game. If you don't, it is certainly worth looking up. This is a fun game to play at dinner parties if you are looking for a conversational game that everybody can take part in. Well, the Kevin Bacon game is a game that's rooted in this idea that we are all connected to one another. You might have heard this concept, 6 degrees of separation. Well, it turns out that Kevin Bacon is related to 87% of the actors in the IMDb, that's the International Movie Database, in 3 links or less. So the game is that you name an actor and the other person has to get back to Kevin Bacon within 3 steps, or within 6 steps rather. That's a successful rotation of that game. So you might start with Ryan Gosling. So that's actually, that one's a direct link actually, because Ryan Gosling, I'm actually not very good at this game. Ryan Gosling was in Crazy Stupid Love directly with Kevin Bacon. So that's 1 degree of separation. But you can imagine if you backed that up, Ryan Gosling, we could do it with Rachel McAdams, who's a York University graduate. If we start with Rachel McAdams, she was in The Notebook with Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling was in Crazy Stupid Love with Kevin Bacon, and so on and so on. So you can figure out how many links it takes you to get from any actor to Kevin Bacon, and it works for over 85% of the actors that are registered in the International Movie Database. It's a fascinating idea because it works for Kevin Bacon, but it doesn't work for other actors. This is the thing that is interesting. This is what makes this example so interesting. So it doesn't work for somebody like Tom Cruise, and it doesn't work for Amy Schumer. And there's good reason why. And if you thought about it for just a moment, you would come to it quite easily. That Tom Cruise has made the same movie many times, over and over and over again. He's working with a small network of actors, a small network of producers and directors, whereas Kevin Bacon has been in dramas and comedies. He has been on television and in the movies. He has been in theater. He plays main characters, leading roles. He also does guest spots, and he's also willing to take a secondary role. So Kevin Bacon, it's his vast experience and his willingness to jump genres and to move from one place to another that makes him, if you remember this term from the last unit, makes him central to the network of actors in the International Movie Database. All right, so here's the starting point. Social networks are a construction of people that are linked together. A social network is bounded by a set of individuals linked by the exchange of material or resources. So meaning that we have connections between individuals. These individuals will exchange things that are meaningful. And members are known to exchange resources more frequently with others than with people who are not linked to them. A person's position in a social network, i.e. their social capital, and we'll define that a little more clearly in the next slide, determines in part the set of opportunities and constraints they will encounter. So networks are what lie beneath our understanding of the world or our construction of the world. They're kind of these invisible collectivities of our social life, and they tell us how resources will flow. Interestingly, social network analysis was actually developed on disease and the flow of disease. So they actually tell us how more than resources will flow. They also tell us how other aspects of anything that can be transferred from human to human can flow. Friendship, relationship, money, and disease, all of this stuff. So let's investigate this a little bit more. Networks are used to build social capital. So social capital will define as the resources that can provide new ideas, timely information, job opportunities, business lead, influence, and social supports. All of these things can be they are part of your social capital. According to a management scholar, Margaret Heffernan, the trust, knowledge, reciprocity, and shared norms that create quality of life and make a group more resistant. That is what social capital is. Okay? So our networks determine our social capital. These links between human beings end up being very important and tell us a lot about our success in life and our success in business in particular. And that's what we'll talk about within this course. I want to give you one example of a way in which a network is predictive of your success. When you are at the early stages of your career, which you might be, many of you will be who are taking this course, you want to be constructing a particular type of social network. The social network you want to be constructing is one that is replete with weak ties, that has a great number of connections to a large number of people that aren't necessarily tight, rich friendships, but that are what we call weak ties. These are ties where you're very familiar with the person, you like the person, but it's not necessarily a friendship. When you are looking for opportunities and resources, you want to have many connections. That's because the opportunities, the unique opportunities, can't be found through your tight connections. Your tight connections have access to the same resources as you. You're in the same cluster. It's those weak ties, the ties that are on the fringe of your network, where you are going to find the most important resources. Weak ties are important, more important than strong ties for job searches, pay increases, and promotions. And it turns out that as you begin to develop your career, you want to have strong ties. They become more important than weak ties. So when you're in high status positions, you want to develop what I like to call a board of directors, a series of strong ties, people that you can trust, that you can go to and ask advice of. Right? So we know that I gave you this example to illustrate that the construction of your network is very important for determining the type of success you will have at various stages of your career and measured against different activities. Let's illustrate this for a moment, and then I want to share some research with you that I have done. What does your network look like? You may have seen diagrams such as these in the past, where you can think about the dots as being people, and then think about the lines as being connections between people. The size of the dot, the shape of the dot, the length of the line, this can all have meaning, right? So sometimes we look at the length of the line as the weakness, the strength or the weakness of the relationship. Sometimes the dot is used to illustrate whether it's a male or female, whether it's a mentor or a mentee, and so on and so on. There's lots of different ways you can conceptualize the visuals within these networks. Interestingly, you can construct your own social network. I've given you within this module 2 ways that you can do it. One is to use your LinkedIn platform, and that is interesting. It is a bit it is not a clear representation of your network, because arguably some of those connections are not alive, right? There are people within your LinkedIn profile who you don't necessarily have relationships with, but have in one way or another found their way onto your network. So it might not be the most accurate representation of your network. I've given you a second way to try and map out your network, which is quite tedious, but might be visually interesting for you, and you might be interested in doing that. Those resources are available for you on the website. But what I want to do is to spend a little bit of time talking to you about an example that I did of a study where I used social networking to understand the experiences of individuals, men versus women, at different stages of their career. And what I looked at were careers in agriculture. So a colleague of mine, my colleague at the University of Guelph, Dr. Sarah Mann, and I We did a series of qualitative interviews, kind of to get a bit more a deeper understanding of the context. We did a series of social network drawings for individuals at various stages in their career, both men and women, at early and later stages in their career. And then we mapped out those networks. And I have some exemplars here for you, some examples of what these networks look like. On the left side of your screen, you will see the social network of an early career female within the agriculture industry. On the right-hand side of your screen, you will see the social network of an established woman's career within the agriculture industry. Notice the interconnectivity on the right and the kind of clustering on the right. We call those clusters cliques. So it seems that as you develop a career and you establish a leadership style type role within the agriculture industry, at least for women, according to these drawings, what you end up seeing is deep interconnectivity. This is a highly consultative industry, it turns out. And it means that individuals are often engaging and interacting with one another. And to the extent that you're able to create that network, it affords you the ability to be successful and to enter a leadership role within this industry. You'll also see on the right hand side something interesting: the number of pink circles or magenta circles, the number of females within this network. I draw that out because it's an interesting occurrence that while the early career network is dominated by men and there's a few females on the periphery, we tend to see deeper, richer connections with females by senior female leaders later in career. Okay, so let's look at a couple more pairings. This pairing on the left, we have the same diagram as on the previous page, which is an early career female. And on the right, we have an early career male. So now we're comparing people at the same stage of career, but across two different genders. Interestingly, we see similar patterns. We see the clustering, but we do see a predominance of men on the right. We also see kind of a deeper clustering, less people on the periphery, but certainly some really tight connections within both of these social networks. Another one here. We'll go through a couple more, or one more rather. I want to compare the established female on the left to the established male, they're both in leadership positions within the agriculture industry. So again, we see this richness of interconnectivity, this kind of equality of distribution of relationship across these people. They have a lot of tight relationships, and the people that they know the same people. So there's a lot of interconnectivity. But again, I highlight that on the left we see a larger number of women. It's almost as though the females in this industry have a board of directors, as I've noted earlier, but have a cluster of women that help them to understand what it's like to be a woman in this male-dominated industry. You do not see that in the right-hand side of your screen, where you see the cluster for the established male. Right. So we were able to get some really interesting messages from this study. So here are some of the takeaways, some of the big picture ideas that we were able to share with this industry. First, early career networks are characterized by cliques. So cliques are normal in the early part of a career. But if we want to build, we have to be very deliberate about distributing those cliques and moving beyond them in order to, as we establish our careers and develop our careers. Early careers are characterized by a heavy concentration of males. That might be just a feature of the industry. Agriculture is at the entry levels is dominated by men, so it could also be that that is just an availability issue. Men are more available at that stage of career. Networks of those with established careers are characterized by the dominance of men. And that again could be an availability issue. There are just more men in this sector. The industry is highly consultative. which we've talked about a couple times, and women in leadership have a board of directors. So the advice we'd be able to give based on this study is that if you are a woman who wants to be successful within the agriculture industry, you want to build a certain type of network. You want to be deliberate about the way in which you are seeking out opportunities, the way in which you are making connections with others. You're seeking to move from this clique-based network to more to a broader network with high levels of interconnectivity. In order, that's what leadership profiles look like, right? So the message to you is that it is important to be quite deliberate about the way in which you network. That it's important to spend time creating and cultivating a network that will lead to the outcomes that you would find valuable. So this brings me to the question of, does networking make you feel dirty? This is an interesting question. I didn't make this question up. This is actually a question that's been asked by a series of researchers at the Rotman School of Business, the University of Toronto, Harvard Business School, and Kellogg at Northwestern. They've looked at networking and this sense that some of us have that networking is manipulating relationships, right? Creating these relationships can be disingenuous or not authentic. And that networking, and what they found is that networking for purely personal gain can make an individual feel tainted or awkward, this idea of moral impurity. And such feelings, this idea of being inauthentic or being tainted, it deters you from further networking, which can have a negative effect on your job prospects, your job possibilities, your job performance, and reduce your career opportunities. So I suggest that you reframe your idea of networking. And there's research to show that you will see in the video that you watch by Adam Grant that people who spend most of their time taking from the relationships around them and extracting value from their networks are not those who are actually benefiting in the ways that we're talking about in terms of career progression and promotion and all these important career outcomes, access to resources. In order to be able to get something out of your network, you need to add value into your network. So I want you to think about this. What are skills, resources, information, support do you add to your network? It's very interesting to note, and I encourage you to watch Adam Grant speak in order to understand this more fully, that those who are giving, those who are actively creating value for others and looking at networking not as an opportunity to get something, but as an opportunity to create a link through which resources can flow in both directions, is a useful reframing of this important aspect of leadership development and of career development. All right, I hope that this idea and these ideas are useful to you. This is the end of Unit 10, and again, I encourage you to take part in all of the material within this unit available to you on the website. Take care, and I'll see you next time.